Good evening, everybody. Kevin J. Johnston here. This is the Real Estate and Money Show that is every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight is episode 32, Tax Court and Gold. We also have a special guest that you've seen on this show before. Kim Park is going to be joining us shortly to talk about gold, silver, and property for sale, property for rent, for lease, whatever it might be, but we prefer for sale, of course, all over Mexico and here in Panama. So we'll have Kim joining us in less than 15 minutes time. We wanted to dive right into this, everybody. And that is, I got to share this. I know on TikTok and on Kick, you're not going to see this, but I will explain what we're looking at here. Tax Court of Canada, everyone. Tax Court of Canada has become something that taught us by default that there is no authority in Canada when it comes to taxes. So the idea of taxes in Canada, they pretty much are voluntary. The only legal obligation you have for tax in Canada is to submit your income tax form, whether there's money on it or not. You actually, if you don't feel like cooperating with them, just simply put your social insurance number, first and last name, a signature, and nothing else, and send that in. Congratulations, your tax return is done. The Canada Revenue Agency at that point, everybody is going to assess you, but it's a guess. They guess. They just write a random number down as to what you owe on taxes. Now, when you get an assessment, it doesn't mean you owe any money at all. That's just them trying to steal from you. And what we do immediately is we file an objection and demand an appeal date. So we appeal. Now, here's the way that it worked. Client of mine appeals a $70,000 tax assessment. In the appeal court, the judge just didn't like me because I've got a big mouth, and the judge knows that if he lets me speak, I'm going to win. So he denies me being their representative. Clause 15 of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights says you can hire me or anyone of your choice to represent you. So that happened on a Thursday. We appealed that. And on the Monday, the appeal on that decision, especially the decision that the judge made to not postpone or adjourn it to get full disclosure, which my client didn't have, the new judge on the Monday's case says, I'm not going to accept the appeal on the previous judge's decision not to allow Mr. Johnston, me, to represent, but also on non-disclosure. And it wouldn't matter because the disclosure is not going to change my mind. And the judge actually said this. So when my client loses, obviously they were going to lose because tax court is not a court. It's a tribunal that is really meant to just intimidate us. Well, my client loses, but we immediately appealed that. So we still have the appeal on the first decision by a judge to not let me represent, and an appeal on the judge's decision, the second judge's decision. So that's two appeals on the same amount of money being owed. But then the Canada Revenue Agency, who now has technically won in appeal court, doesn't go and get a judgment in their favor against my client for the $70,000. All they do is say, well, okay, he lost in the appeal court, so let's just assess him again. And they issued a $90,000 assessment to my client, which we have appealed. So isn't it crazy that if the CRA, if the Canada Revenue Agency wins in tax court, the most that they can do is just guess how much you owe them. It's not actually a judgment. So if you lose in tax court, we just appeal everything. And it's going to be another year or so before this gets heard in tax court again for my client, which means my client is going to just never end up owing that money. Doesn't change the fact that we're still going to remove my client's name from his own house. We're going to move it into a trust, and we're also going to move all of his money into a corporate bank account and into an American bank account that we are not going to tell the Canada Revenue Agency about. Why? Last week, I told you about Chapter 10 of the auditor's guidebook, the auditor's manual, and it says that they don't have any authority. So not only does the Canada Revenue Agency not have any authority to force you to talk to them, but even the court doesn't have authority. Now, let's go through the court here. This is where it gets very interesting, everyone. This is the Tax Court of Canada's actual website. So everything I'm going to read to you is verbatim from their own website. This section strives to give you information and tools to help you start your appeal or application, prepare for your hearing, and understand what is expected of you. In no way does this section constitute legal advice or should be taken to mean that legal advice is not necessary. We encourage you to seek legal advice first. Some information on where to find a lawyer can be found here. All right, so we move our way down here. And the most important part of what we want to cover is, ready for this? Verbatim, everybody. The Tax Court of Canada has exclusive original jurisdiction to hear and determine references and appeals to the court on matters arising from 14 different acts of Parliament. All of them are tax-based, by the way. Most files that come to our court relate to income tax or goods and services tax. Depending on your situation, the first document you need to file will either be called a notice of appeal or an application of an extension of time. To find out which procedure you can use, click here. Informal procedure. The informal procedure is intended to minimize and simplify the legal steps involved in the appeal process. There are no filing fees associated with this type of procedure. It is free to appeal your taxes in Canada. For income tax appeals, the informal procedure is limited to cases in which the amount of federal tax and penalties in dispute for each taxation year, excluding interest, is $25,000 or less, and to cases in which the amount of loss in question is $50,000 or less. For GST appeals, which is the goods and services tax, on the other hand, the informal procedure is limited to cases in which the amount at issue is $50,000 or less. So it's kind of like small claims within the same court. If your amounts exceed these limits, but you would rather proceed with the informal procedure, you may do so by stating in your notice of appeal that you agree to limit your appeal to $25,000 or $50,000 as the case may be. And then the general procedure is more formal in its proceedings and legal steps. Filing fees are associated. So if it's more than 50 grand in tax you want to appeal, it costs you $250 to do it. In Class B, it'll cost you $400, which is up to $150,000. Okay, whoopee-doo. Whoopee-doo. What I'm getting at here is tax court has a very simplified procedure for anyone who's got an assessment from the CRA, which is not tax owed. It's just the Canada Revenue Agency guessing that you owe tax and trying to threaten you into it. Now, as we went through this document, and you can see there's the address right there, tcc-cci.gc.ca. That's their official website. It's a horrible domain name, but that's it. All right. What they say in here, you got to read it for yourselves. I can't read the whole thing because we're short on time tonight. But what they say in there is that it only has federal tax court only has jurisdiction over Canada Revenue Agency matters. It cannot and does not have any ability to judge or rule over provincial income tax or municipal tax. So what's the point of having a federal tax court that doesn't have any jurisdiction over anything or anyone except for one agency? And that's the Canada Revenue Agency. And even then, we know that we, the people, are going to lose in that court. So we just appeal again and appeal again. And 5, 10, 15 years down the road, when you've moved all your money and assets out of your name, with my help, of course, they can't get anything from you anyway. So I just wanted everyone to know that we have discovered this remarkable fact, and that is that the Canada Revenue Agency does not have any jurisdiction. Federal tax court in Canada is only a tribunal, and there's only how many? Was it 10 judges? 25 judges assigned. So 25 judges assigned to all of the tax courts all over Canada. And in Hamilton, Ontario, which is Canada's Pittsburgh, which is 48 kilometers west of Toronto, they've already closed down one of the federal tax centers. Why? Well, because of unfettered immigration, all the gangs are shooting each other downtown Hamilton, which was always a tough city. And they decided to fear it and say, well, we don't want to work where there's gunshots going off. So they have shut down the Hamilton federal tax building in Canada. Now, here's one more mind-blowing fact about Canada Tax Court, which is on the same website that I've just shown you tonight. And that is that the only thing that they can judge is, yes, you owe tax. No, you don't owe tax. They are not allowed. They do not have the jurisdiction in Canada Federal Tax Court to issue a monetary penalty in the favor of you, we the people, or in favor of the Canada Revenue Agency. So let me repeat everything I've just said over the last 10 minutes here. Canada's Federal Tax Court does not have any authority over provincial or municipal courts or provincial and municipal income taxes or taxes in general, and only has the ability to say, yes, you owe tax and no, you don't. And if they say, no, you don't, you can appeal that. And if you sue the CRA in tax court, they can't issue money to you. And if the Canada Revenue Agency sues you in federal tax court, the federal tax court cannot award them money either. So why does federal tax court even exist in Canada? It's just to give you the illusion that the Canada Revenue Agency has some type of power, and to give you the illusion that there's actually a due process open to all of us to beat taxes. It's not going to be in tax court. When you come to me, when you hire me to do your taxes for you and to get rid of the Canada Revenue Agency, you got to remember this. 1, I'm not a lawyer. 2, I'm not a paralegal, which means I'm not bound by any of the rules of the law society of any province. Number 3, I am not a chartered professional accountant. Do you know why that is awesome? It's because I have no license to lose. I go straight on the attack against the Canada Revenue Agency, and I bring information like this to you. Do you know, in the last 5 days alone, I have brought in 6 accounting firms are my clients now. I'm doing taxes for accountants, police, and border guards in Canada. Why? Because the Canada Revenue Agency is going after all of them too. The Canada Revenue Agency has become a bureaucratic monster with its own sentience, it appears. But so long as we follow the law to the letter of the law, they have no authority, because all they're relying on is the Income Tax Act, the GST Act, and the Excise Tax Act, which does not afford them any power except for one thing. And that is the Canada Revenue Agency has the right to send you letters. But so does every other Canadian. I can send anybody a letter that I want saying, hey, you owe me money, give it to me. Now, if they really don't owe me money, how would I get it? And how do I enforce that? Right? The Canada Revenue Agency, they don't use the courts to enforce anything. What they do is they send a letter to your bank, which is called the requirement to pay. But requirement to pay is not a legal term. It's actually theft. They have to get a court order in Canada for the bank to give your money over. And the banks figure that the odds of the CRA suing them are higher than we, the people, suing them. So they just do what the CRA says. The Canada Revenue Agency only has 50 lawyers working for it from the Department of Justice. They just do not have the manpower or the legal backing to do all these things that they threaten they're going to do. We have charged 5 Canada Revenue Agency agents with crimes so far this year, and I'm 13 for 13 on court cases against the CRA this year. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and that's why I'm winning, because I can do all the things that lawyers are too afraid to do. In Canada, lawyers do what they are told by both parties, the client and the opponent. Why? Because Canada's a corrupt place. And the only way that Canada makes money, because it's no longer a country, it's an economic zone, is the Ponzi scheme of continuing to threaten Canadians and foreigners with tax bills that are not real. That is why I do what I do, everybody, because I cannot stand the courts. I cannot stand the Canada Revenue Agency. I cannot stand lawyers in Canada. I despise the whole system. And I have found a way to beat that system. So get a hold of me for all your tax problems in Canada at my website address, kevinjjohnston.com. All right. Now we got to talk about gold, silver, and real estate. So Kim Park is back. Kim, so good to see you again. I understand that you are here in Panama City, 10 Ks from me or less.
Absolutely. Hello from down the street.
Yes.
Feels great to be in Panama again. That feeling of being on the road is amazing. And I traveled many times here in Panama, and it's just an amazing country. So you know
Oh,
all
well,
about it.
now you know why I live here now. I mean, Panama has been so golden to me. I love this place. I absolutely do. Kim, you and I had a very long conversation last night about equity, about diversification of one's portfolio. Get your take on this agreement that we made. That is, if you want to have a diverse financial portfolio in this crazy modern world, you need to have property. Hopefully it's land, a house with land or a farm with land. Some cash in your native currency, some gold, some silver, and some crypto, preferably XRP, Bitcoin, or Ethereum, and a combination of the three. Kim, I want to get your thoughts on why it was you agreed with me on that point. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I think the whole point is that we understand that this whole system that you're talking about, they're basically removing one piece at a time, which is representing freedom for us. For example, when money back in the days were backed by gold and silver, this was removed, and all of a sudden we had less freedom because they can all of a sudden inflate our money away with infinite money printing and money spending, right? And that's basically impossible when you have a 1-to-1 ratio on the money supply and the gold supply. And that's why all the central banks around the world are basically buying up gold. And in the future, I believe they will probably buy up silver as well, because both silver and gold is basically this insanely scarce commodity, which is on the periodic table. And it's basically impossible to construct or put together any substance that represents it or is a substitute for it, right? And silver is basically like the most used commodity on the planet, second only to oil. It's used in, electronics. It's used in clothing. When you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at silver, and it's used in so many things. And then you have gold, which is used in aerospace. It's used in dentistry. It's used in the jewelry market. Is about 50% of the whole gold market. So I believe that gold and silver is absolutely crucial to have in your diversity portfolio, because it's basically a commodity which you can keep physically and have the value in your hand. Mm-hmm. In this modern day world, when you have all these made up bullshit, values and commodities, and you have these ETFs, that's basically how they manipulate market, right? But if you hold the physical gold or silver, it's something that they cannot take away. And if you look at the COMEX gold market in New York, you will find that one gold position may have maybe 500 or 600 owners, but there's only one that can take delivery, right? Which means it's a big hoax, the whole system. So I think gold and silver is very important to educate ourselves on. And what you will find is that it's basically true money and true value that has been around for thousands of years. It started in a place called Lydia about 4,600 years ago in where it's now modern day Turkey. And it turned into gold coins, and they, clipped the coins to, basically debase the currency back then. So it's the same story over and over again in the Roman Empire, and that's exactly what they're doing now. They're debasing the currency to the point where it's just digits on the screen, and we are basically hoaxed into work for these fictitious numbers on the screen, which has no backing. And as you may or may not know, the past 3-4 years since the health hoax, they have printed more money than was in existence since the creation of the Federal Reserve back in 2013, which means that they have created more money in the past 4 years than was created in the whole century before. That's insane.
And it's not backed by anything. So to get back to what you were saying there about gold and silver, we have pretty much statistics, like historical records of the value of gold and silver dating back just about 5,000 years. And we know that an ounce of silver back in the day, Roman times, before that, Persian times and so on, would buy you a day's worth of provisions, and an ounce of gold or a gold coin would buy you a month's worth of provisions. Now, gold overtook platinum in value. I believe it was 2008, mainly because platinum was only got about 30 to 40 years of record keeping in its value. And then everyone said palladium was going to be the next big thing, but it didn't surpass gold either. So I making it very clear to my children that you got to put enough money aside to buy at least 2 full ounces of gold per year. Because if you do that from age 20 to age 60, that's a lot of ounces. That's 40 plus ounces of gold if you're doing it annually. Or sorry, 80 if you do 2 a year annually. And you got to factor in that's about not quite $3,000 an ounce now Canadian, but it will be probably 10 to 15 at that particular time. Now, gold is not something that I would buy to make a quick turnover. I would do that with houses. I wouldn't do that with gold. For me personally, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here. I would be buying gold and silver with the intent of hanging on to it for at least 10 years before I even consider selling it. It's kind of like I'm spending the money now. I will never get that money back, but I do retain the value. Your thoughts? Go ahead.
Exactly. And I think, gold is the best way to store value. It's something where you can keep value very securely. And especially if you have physical gold in your hand, you know that you have the value. You don't have a counterparty. If you put the money into the bank, most people don't understand. But once you deposit the money into the bank, the money is not yours anymore. You actually sign a contract which nobody reads once you open an account, which says that you are basically the creditor. You are actually borrowing the money to the bank once you give it to them, and they can give it back if they want to and when they want to. So it's very interesting how this system that you speak of is basically hoaxing us left, right, center, and they're taking away our freedoms very slowly to the point where people don't really rise up and do anything about it because it's such a slow development. But all of a sudden, you're going to wake up one day and have no freedom. And I think gold and silver is very important. But also, I think crypto has a very important place in a diversity portfolio because basically, if you talk to people and listen to people like Peter Schiff and stuff like that, he's also a gold bug, but he doesn't really understand the value of Bitcoin. Because the value in Bitcoin is not that it's backed by something, but it's the possibility to transact outside of the banking system. And that has some value. And that's why you should keep some crypto on hand, and you should definitely have a place in your portfolio with crypto.
Absolutely. And Bitcoin, you can't go wrong. It was the first. It's still the biggest. And even though others might surpass it in value, I think it would be a very, very temporary thing.
Sure.
If you've got Bitcoin, and Jay says XRP, and Jay's not wrong. I mean, XRP is certainly something that I am investing in myself because I'm seeing the potential in it. But there are times, folks, if you got some extra Bitcoin there and you've made some money in a bull market, you can turn around and play some games like I did with Terra Luna. Crypto.com was selling Terra Luna for 30 cents a coin. And they also offered 30% return on staking with it. So I was earning 30% on that. It went to $90 per coin. I'm thinking, I've got 500 of these things. I don't think this is going to last. And I blew them out the door for Bitcoin. And it turns out that I was absolutely right because it dropped right back down to 2 cents. So I blew them out the door at almost $91 US value.
Yeah, the interesting thing about crypto is that right now, we have a very interesting market, and right now is the perfect timing to get into crypto. If one would say it's too late, I don't have the possibility anymore. Well, right now it's a very low price point for crypto, and this is going to take off not far from now because you have this halving that we had now. That's this spring this year, and after the halving, if you look at the history, each halving has always been followed by a sharp upturn. And it's not because of the markets and circumstances or whatever. It's more like it's baked in the system because they are basically producing half as many crypto. They're minting half as many crypto Bitcoins each year, which means that there's less, and the scarcity, demand
Right.
and scarcity basically makes it happen. It's very
That's
easy.
exactly right. Okay, now we were talking about some cash. I mean, obviously, for me, my deepest concern with holding money in the bank in Canada. We've seen after the truckers' convoy that thousands of bank accounts got shut down. I do taxes professionally. I get people out of tax debt very quickly. And I can tell you that the vast majority of my clients have got some kind of a threat on them to take their money out of the bank. And I'd say a small percentage of clients that we don't get to their paperwork fast enough, the banks just give it. They just give it to the CRA. So there's no such thing as secure anything in Canada. The banks will just give your cash away whenever they are told to do so. Pointless. So one of the solutions is, everyone, that you can open up a corporation in a great state like Florida, Montana, or Wyoming. And if you are a Canadian citizen or anybody who's outside the States, you can go ahead and do that online. Just register a corporation for $95. You have to have an American address. So a lot of these lawyers in the States, they're really serious about making money. So you can pay them between $300 and $400 US a year for an actual American address. Your mail goes to your lawyer now. They open it, scan it, email it to you, and shred it. I mean, that is incredible stuff. And when you have a US corporation, an LLC especially, with a US address, you can now apply for the ITIN number. They call it the ITIN number and the IN number. And the IRS is going to just give it to you because they want commerce to take place. So with that, everyone, now you can open up a bank account with a bank like Relay. Relay's like Tangerine and Coho. It's a virtual bank. Now you've got an American address. You've got an American corporation. You have an American bank account. You can move all your money out of Canada into the United States, just like that. And then with the ITIN number and the IN number, getting yourself an E2 visa is a matter of just going into the United States and applying. Now, we do have a bit of an issue. We covered this on my show last night there, Kim, and that is 52% of Canadians that try for E2 visas get denied. For some reason, America does, well, it's not the American people. It's the Biden administration does not want Canadians bringing money into the United States and buying up cheap properties. We covered last night on my show that the condo market in Florida, for example, has crashed. 1, 2, and 3 bedroom condos are selling for between $65,000 and $95,000 all over the state. Think about that. Yes. So you could, in Canada, just use your credit card and buy a condo now in Florida. But let's talk about Mexico and Panama. Panama, I am well aware of the fact that you can buy condos down here for $50,000, $60,000. I'm also aware that there are houses going into places like Panama Pacifico for $60,000 for a townhouse. But you had a couple of projects in Mexico around the Cancun area. Please go ahead. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to have some cash flow properties in your portfolio. And I think if you can find, good hotspots where you have a lot of tourism coming in and a lot of expats, you will have this constant flow of business where you can rent out to people. And what I found is that you can actually have almost double, sometimes even triple the amount of returns that you get on a property if you choose wisely the kind of area that you want to be in. And I was actually out with a broker the other day here in Panama as well. And you have really interesting condos. I mean, Panama is great because you have the whole Bay Area in this city. You have these insane high-rise buildings. It's almost like Miami, right? So I think it's like a cross between Miami and a typical Latin city. So you get the best of both worlds, right? And these condos have just insane views over the bay and the ocean. And it's super easy to rent out, really nice deals. And if you can get yourself one of those condos, you can rent them out very easily on Airbnb. Same thing in Playa del Carmen and also Cancun in Mexico. It's very easy because, everybody heard about Cancun. Most people have been to Playa del Carmen. And I'm building a project right now in Playa del Carmen myself. And, the numbers are just insane. It's very hard to say no. So I'm helping clients all the time to get properties where they can sort of maximize their returns. And that's what it's all about. I don't really care what you invest in. If it's, land for development or if it's, you see here in the pictures, you see these high-rise buildings. And you can imagine when you have buildings with 60, 70 floors, the insane views, especially at nighttime, when you see all the lights, it looks like just insanely inviting, right? And I visited Trump Tower actually the other day. I had a meeting with my lawyer there, and Trump Tower also has some insane apartments for sale and also for rent. You can also rent if that's your choice. And as you know, the rents are also quite affordable if you compare to Canada, where you get pretty much nothing for the money anymore, right? With runaway inflation. So it's
Yes,
a lot of opportunities
really,
down here. That's all I have to say.
well, there are. And for those who are wondering what we're looking at, this is downtown Panama City. This was about 2 months ago. We chartered a small plane to fly all the way to the north end of the country. It only takes 20 minutes to fly from the south end of the country to the north. It's only about an hour of height, but it's wide. It's about a 12-hour drive from coast to coast. Although you cannot drive all the way to Colombia in Panama. There's a huge swamp that just forbids any construction whatsoever. It wouldn't happen. So you got to fly to Colombia from here or take a boat. But if you look at the sheer size of the city, and just imagine a city this big, where half the population of the entire country lives within it. Look at all the opportunities here. What you're looking at, this area is close to the airport. This is the far east side of Panama City, where there's a lot of warehouses for sale. We're looking at 5,000 and 6,000 square foot warehouses that are selling for less than $200,000. We could turn that into a combination of things, bachelor pads and a studio and a trade school, whatever we want to do. You'll also find that if you're coming into Panama, that there are a lot of properties that you can get your hands on. And like Kim was saying, you can get a lot of Airbnb properties. Now, there's a couple of buildings, Kim, you and I did talk about this at length, some office towers, where office towers around the world are kind of emptying out, mainly because everybody can work from home. Like yourself, you and I are doing a show, you're in a restaurant and I'm in a condo. I'm on a 7-year-old laptop. You're on a cell phone. It's amazing what we can all do with our technologies, right? So office towers need to have a new conversion rate. So we were talking to a couple of office towers where they've got entire floors for sale, where all we got to do is get in there, gut the office stuff that's in there, and turn them into interesting residences, Airbnbs, condos, or even schools. So why not? Just come down and look for the opportunities, everyone. Oh, yeah. And Kim, here's the really cool part about the city. Small planes are not supposed to fly over downtown like this. But we asked the pilot, could you call in and tell him there's some rich gringos in the plane? So he gets on there and in Spanish, he says, oh, yeah, we have rich gringos in the plane. Can we do a flyover? And he got permission from the tower to do a flyover. So I'm going to just advance a little bit here so you can see how close we got to the tops of the buildings.
The rich white guy comes down and bosses things around, people around.
Well, there's no white privilege in North America at all, contrary to popular belief, but there is in Panama.
Yeah, but this is the truth. I mean, when you go abroad, and especially in Latin America, a lot of people have heard about, oh, it's so dangerous and it's so risky. But what you will find is that people are extremely welcoming to foreigners. It's like this endless help that you get everywhere. People are so helpful, and they, I had people, just because I asked for directions, they're on their way to work and they have very little time, but all of a sudden they have all the time in the world just because they want to help me, they want to show me. So people are so helpful, and that's what people are gonna realize once they come down here. But about opportunities, I completely agree. There's so many opportunities. It doesn't matter what kind of concept you have, and you can definitely find a good piece of property to construct this concept. And once you get that in there, you've basically filled the gap in the market, and you can start to cash flow very nicely. And that's a very important part of our portfolio. So I completely agree.
Yeah. And as Kim said, everybody, if you want to really diversify the portfolio, it is a good idea to have rental properties, even if it's the type of thing where you've got yourself a piece of land with a house and you build 2 smaller houses and rent them out. Sure. Yeah. We're at the point now where everybody wants to look for something different. Everybody likes to do the thing with the phone, right? They got the phone. Look at me. Look how great my life is. Look at me. Look, yeah, they got all the posing going on. So people are looking to rent more interesting things. And I found there's a guy online that grabbed a whole bunch of old boxcars and turned train boxcars into apartments, into Airbnb apartments. Pretty cool idea. People are putting that stuff up on Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, and all of a sudden this guy's booked forever. So if you do have any particular type of imagination, you can really do what you want here. Kim and I also had a good laugh about this. We always have to build grease into the price. Grease is good. Everyone says, well, it's Panama, it's corrupt. Well, every country's corrupt. Panama's not different that way. Costa Rica's corrupt. Mexico's corrupt. Canada is corrupt. The United States is corrupt.
Right? It's just that normal people like us, we don't have access to it back in Canada or Europe or wherever. I mean, down here, you'll find that you can get things done. And that's what I like about Latin America. It's figure outable. It's absolutely doable. Whatever project you set out to do, right? So
to just give you an example of what I'm talking about, I was building a backyard hockey rink in my hometown of Mississauga to the immediate west of Toronto. And it took me 6 months to get a permit to have a fence built around the hockey rink that's 8 feet high. Because for some reason, 5 feet 7 inches is the maximum height, but you can add trellis if you want for another 11 inches. What's the difference between trellis and an 8-foot fence, aside from the 1.5 feet?
Exactly. And it's all this regulation that's basically building year after year after year. But if nobody's cleaning up and getting rid of old bad regulation, eventually all this regulation is going to build on top of all of society. And all of a sudden, nothing is legal anymore. Right. So it's a very bad situation where you have countries where the bureaucracy is just like insane to navigate. And I think down here, what I found when I came down here was that everything is doable as long as you have the right contacts. And as we said before, both me and Kevin, we have a lot of contacts both in construction, real estate, and also in immigration. So if you wanted to, I showed this residency card here before to Kevin. I picked it up this morning. So I got my residency right now in Panama. So if anybody's interested, we also have a way of fast tracking your residency down here in Panama. And as we discussed before, there are vast opportunities to reduce your taxes if you do business down here, and you can even move your money into the country tax-free. That's something that Kevin and me have talked about in the past, right?
We have, and to open up a bank account, if you're a Canadian or an American citizen, to open up a bank account down here is a flat rate $9.50 Canadian. It's just a passport, second piece of government identification. Then you've got a letter from your bank to prove that you exist, and a bill, a utility bill, cell phone, Netflix, internet, whatever it might be. Now, Kim, you're going to love this one. I went out of my way. I worked very hard on this with the banks down here in Panama. I'm telling them that a lot of Canadians just cannot get access to their Canada Revenue Agency accounts. So if the banks are wanting a tax return, Canadians can't get them because the CRA is not giving it to them. So I asked them, like, knowing that the Canadian government is not cooperating with Canadian citizens, how do we skip that step? And it turns out that they will take the letter with your bank and a meeting over Zoom or over Skype or wherever it might be, so long as you can do things like take your passport and open it up for them, answer their questions, and congratulations, you've got a bank account. So what I do every Friday morning, I walk over to the bank, I take everyone's applications with me, I sit down with the bank manager, and the accounts just get opened one at a time, and they will set up the Zoom calls where I sit in the bank manager's office, like I'm wearing a tie in Panama. That's hot, but we sit, we talk, and the accounts just get opened up assembly line. And now you're down here, and we're adding residencies to that service list. So it's time to start really getting your money out of Canada, folks, because
absolutely. And I think it's very important to mention also for the viewers, if you are a Canadian, I think you know from the past what happens when the government gets too much control. They basically empty and freeze the bank account of hardworking, honest Canadian people just because you have a viewpoint that they don't like, right? And this is so important. This is the reason why you need a portfolio, diversified portfolio with gold, silver, Bitcoin, cash flow, real estate. You need multiple residencies because it's not getting better. When has a government ever improved freedom for the people? All they are thinking about is to improve their benefits for the people who are working in the government, right? So
Right.
I think we haven't seen anything yet. And what's going to happen is that people who say that, okay, I'm going to leave once it gets too hot, when it gets really worse. But it's moving so slowly that you will never feel that it's too hot. It's never going to be so bad that you feel that you're going to leave. So the time to set up these, multiple residencies, these insurances with Bitcoin and gold and silver, and start investing and educate ourselves, that time is now. And I started buying gold and silver back in 2016. And I felt that I was late to the game, and I was annoyed that I didn't start investing back in 2002, 2003, when gold was like $200 an ounce. So if you're sitting there now and you're thinking, oh, but I'm too late anyway, the thing is, you haven't seen anything. The gold prices are slightly moving upwards, but with this insane money printing and this insane runaway inflation that's coming like a tidal wave, you're going to see gold and silver prices soar and skyrocket to insane levels in the coming year.
You certainly are. And I'm glad you brought that up. And that is, inflation in Canada and the United States is out of control. And I mean completely out of control, to the point now where we're not even sure which housing markets are going to be the ones to crash first. Now in Canada, what a lot of people don't know, Kim, is that it's over 80% of property value is that height because of money laundering. Money laundering is the biggest industry in Canada. Never mind foresting, never mind meat, never mind diamonds and oil and whatnot. It's money laundering. It's the fact that they're building condominium after condominium after condominium. And as you got folks from China and Hong Kong who are losing their money there because of the communist government. So they're buying condos and leaving them empty. It's what they refer to as
I heard about this. Yeah, I heard about that.
It's all money laundering. So what happens when that market tanks and there's too much stock? Well, let me tell you what happens. You can see this in Brazil, in the capital city of Brazil, Brasilia, and also in Rio de Janeiro, is that there's been a lot of buildings that were trying to meet these ridiculous demands. The builders ran out of money, and the buildings remained derelict. So they just turned into vertical slums where gangs began fighting for control of select parts of the tower. Now imagine living on the 60th floor of a building with no windows and no guardrails. It's just open space. That's what could happen in Canada. So in the Canadian market, if it's not land, don't buy it. Don't buy condos in Canada. It's point. If it's a townhouse, don't buy it unless it's absolutely freehold and that's in your contract. You know, it's time to realize it's got to be real land. It's got to be real gold and silver, not certificates. Like you got to hold the coins and the bars in your hand. Do that.
If you don't hold it, you don't own it. That's right. The rule. Yeah. ETF is just for lazy idiots that just want the comfortability and the easiness. But all of a sudden, they're going to find that 500 other guys have claim to the same position, and then it's not so fun anymore. So you got to buy the physical. But I can't understate how important it also is to get the multiple residencies, because once they implement the new development of having a second pandemic, and believe me, there's going to come a lot of different hoaxes now in the coming years, they will try to pin us down. They will restrict us. And I think the one 2020, 2021 was just like a test run. And they saw how obedient these sheeplish people were. And what happens is that, if you don't have multiple residencies, or at least a second residency, you don't have an option. You have nowhere to go. So if you sit with one residency or one citizenship, and that country put on restriction after restriction, and they make you stay in the country, you have no ability to transact, central bank digital currencies and the social credit score is just around the corner for a lot of Western countries. And once that hits, you have nothing you can do about it. But if you have multiple residencies, you have the freedom of movement and you can get out. And that's why I've been fanatic on, trying to help as many clients as possible to get as many residencies as it's humanly possible, because you're only as free as your options, right?
I agree fully. Now, Randy's asking me in the room here, do I buy gold and silver? Of course I do. 99.99. I always got to make sure that I'm doing this as regularly as possible. And everybody, if you are a client of mine and you don't want to pay cash, you can pay me, well, a credit card, obviously that's digital money, but I take Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP. I even take Chronos, believe it or not. And by all means, you could pay me in gold and silver. Obviously 99.99. Some people will do this, Kim, is that they have a lot of gold and silver lying around and they will choose to pay me with it. And to me, it's currency.
Yeah.
I take, Kim,
sorry.
There's a company in Canada. It's called Canadian Tire. It's everything in there is either medium range or good, not dynamite, just good. Anything you would ever want for a home or a condo is in a Canadian Tire store. And they used to have their own, actually they still do, but they had their own money that they started printing back in the 50s. Yeah, it was 1 cent, 2 cent, 5 cents, 10 cents. When I was doing taxes for people in Canada, they could also pay me at that point in Canadian Tire money, because you could take this Canadian Tire money and go to a Canadian Tire gas station and fill your tank with it. So look, guys, it's currency. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP,
100%.
Chronos.
And just one thing I want to mention there, don't make the mistake of, if you are certain that you want to leave, you want to create a backup plan, you're serious about doing this, don't make the mistake of buying gold and silver before you leave, because that's basically the only weak point of gold and silver, that you need to transport it. And if you have, for example, gold or silver bars, sometimes it can be difficult to transport. But what I found was that when you go to another country, in many cases, they check your bag, but they never frisk you. So it's very, very easy to buy gold and silver coins and just put them in your purse, put them in your wallet along with the other coins. And all of a sudden, you just have like a mix of coins. But either way, I wouldn't buy the gold and silver before you leave. If you say, okay, Canada was better before, now it's gone and it's going to get a hell lot worse. Okay, let's get a backup plan going. And you want to come down and get a second residency, get that second residency so you have that down. And once you come down here, you can buy, we have excellent dealers and coin shops where you can buy gold and silver. I bought gold and silver both in Mexico and also here in Panama. And then you can look at getting a cash flow property going. And basically that's it. Once you have your finances moved, you have your money, more financial freedom, you have a cash flow going, and you have these options. So either if you want to live here in Panama or in Mexico or in Paraguay or any other countries that we recommend, you basically have this option. And what a lot of clients of mine do is that they come down and get the residency first, and they get that sorted. Then they go back to Canada and they get organized, because I totally get it. It's a lot of things to think about, because you have so many ties, you have friends, family, you have things you need to get rid of. So it takes a bit of planning, but you should definitely get the second residency first so you have that secured, because once the shit hits the fan, it's game over if you don't have any options. Right?
Absolutely, it is, everyone. And well, listen to Kim. He's a clever guy. He's a very successful man, which is why I'm very happy to know him. A question we got here from Randy: what's better to buy now, gold or silver? Well, it depends on your budget, guys. I mean, gold is never going to lose its value, and it's always going to have a considerably higher value than silver. Like right now, it's about was it now? Is it 10 times? No, it's not 10 times. That's 100 times the value of silver. Yeah, silver's what, $30 an ounce, and gold 3,000, 100 times. So we want to make sure that you guys are buying what you can afford. If you're still young enough, like I'm 53 now, almost. If you're young enough to invest in something, then get a couple of small 1 ounce bars of silver every single week, because that way, by the end of the year, you've got 52 ounces. Really think about that. That will add up. If silver ever does become as big as the prospectors are saying that it will, I mean, conceivably, it could go to $1,000 an ounce. So you've made yourself a pretty fine profit, I would say. I like gold because it is going to be the easiest one to offload if there is going to be a collapsed economy. It is the fast, you could offload that fast and have whatever you want. Yeah, gold's $3,800 an ounce Canadian right now. That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. Yeah, for
I
sure.
think both gold and silver has a place in our portfolios, but I think the difference is everybody's different, and I think the difference is also that gold is a lot more compact. If you think about $500,000 in gold, it's not a lot of gold. It's very, very compact. It's like you would be
Right.
surprised how little gold you need to store value. So if you want to, move around in the world and you're thinking about, okay, maybe I should just buy a few gold coins, then I can bring them with me in my wallet. That's perfectly fine. But if you're going to buy silver, that's another issue because silver is so cheap. It's like insanely cheap. Back in the 1980s, 1 ounce of silver was $50. Today it's 30. What other products or commodities do you know that's discounted from the 1980s price? It doesn't exist. So silver is like insanely undervalued. But either way, I would still put my money into second residency first. And once you get down here, you can buy gold and silver cheaply and safely down here. But I still think, just like you, I like the fact that gold is very liquid. Everybody knows about it. It doesn't matter where you are on the planet. Everybody knows about gold. You can basically trade it or sell it anywhere. Obviously,
Yeah.
silver is famous as well, but it doesn't hold as much value. And you need basically, shoe boxes of silver just to store the same value as maybe a small gold bar, right? So that's the difference as well.
Correct. Now, Grigo makes a good point here. If you travel with more than 3 ounces of gold now, based on the value, and you don't claim it, they'll take it from you. Okay, you do have to be careful with that. When you're traveling with gold coins and whatnot, you do have to be careful because when I flew from San Jose, Costa Rica, here to Panama City, as I was leaving the airport or getting on the plane, what they said was do not bring more than $10,000 equivalent in US dollars. So because gold, I guess 3 ounces of gold would probably be less than 10,000 US at the time, I'd be okay with that. But you know what else they listed on top of gold, silver, cash, and gems? Sports equipment. You could not bring more than $10,000 worth of sports equipment into Panama from Costa Rica. Just like in Costa Rica, you cannot drive a rental car from Panama into Costa Rica. Remember we talked about this?
Yeah. Soon they will start taxing your pink bikini underpants as well.
Oh, then I'm in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah. Panama's rental cars are about 1/10 the price of Costa Rica's. So we were hoping to fly to Panama, rent a car, drive to Costa Rica, and keep the car working in Costa Rica. Costa Rica government won't let that happen. So the governments in Latin America are trying to protect their own local economies, which I understand and I do respect. So as Kim said, if you're going to move to Panama permanently, then buy your gold and silver here. Don't try to transport it unless you've got something like 9 ounces and you've got a family of 5. You can all carry a little bit and you're going to be okay. Right. But consult with me and Kim before you bring anything to Panama. We don't want to see you lose it. Kim, we're out of time. Any concluding statements?
Yeah, listen, I just want to mention that I was raised in a place just like Canada. I was raised in Sweden. I spent also 20 years in Norway. And, we had a great time for a while. The society was great. We had a lot of good stuff going. I had an ex-girlfriend in Canada. I spent some time in Canada as well, back in 2006. Canada was a great country. But look at it now. It's just insane. It's a shame, to see these places just deteriorate from the inside out just because you have corrupt politicians, left, right, center, making deals with the wrong corporations. And who picks up the tab? The normal people just like you and me. And all I'm saying is that once I moved away from corrupt Europe and I entered Latin America, it was basically like taking off the shackles from being in a dungeon. And when you come over to Latin America, you will not only see that your dollars go so much further down here, whether it's gold, silver, real estate, food, rent, everything, but you will also find that the people down here are extremely friendly. I cannot underline this enough. A lot of people think that Latin America is so dangerous. If you look at places like Toronto, and all these big cities in Canada. Look at the streets in the States. You have drug users left, right, center. You have people who are basically robbing people and committing crimes in broad daylight. It's just insane to see the
Oh, and the
development.
Toronto
So
police have told you to leave your keys at the front door so the thieves
yeah,
can take it.
and all of these insane policies. If you defend your home from somebody breaking in, you will probably get arrested, right? So all I'm saying is, like, if you agree with one or two or all of the points that I mentioned, maybe it's time to prepare a plan B. And that's basically the reason why me and Kevin is down here, because we're doing it ourselves and we want to help other people. So if you are interested, reach out and we will put together a plan for you and your family and for your business. You can start paying 0% taxes. You can enjoy better climate. You can enjoy lower prices and get a really good cash flow property going. And you will never look back. Believe me, I've never been happier. I've moved my whole life over from Europe to Latin America. I will never, ever go back. It will not happen. So I leave it with that. But I think Latin America is a solid choice if you want to have an upgraded life. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's the future. Kim, thanks for being here. Good to see you again. Kim Park, everybody.
Thank you.
If anybody wants to know anything about getting themselves a residency in Mexico, Panama, or Paraguay, Kim Park is the guy. If you want to get a hold of him, just jump over to my website right here, kevinjjohnston.com, and I will get you Kim's WhatsApp number. I'll get you Kim's email address, website, and you and Kim can talk and get that all figured out. And as Kim said, Latin America is the future, folks. Latin America and South America are competing directly with the United States and Canada. And as Canada and the United States sink into depression, Panama, Colombia, Argentina are growing. Panama is going to be a G20 country in 10 years. Mark my word. Now's the time to invest. I live here. Look how clean my skin is. Look how happy I am. Look how stress-free I am. I love this country. I'm having the time of my life. And don't forget, tomorrow we have Lisa Robinson back on the show. It's the Kevin J. Johnston Show. That's my political show every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time on freedomreport.ca. I appreciate you being here. Thank you and good night.